Hi, so here we are with the cosine rule. So this is kind of the higher end of trigonometry. You've probably looked at the sine rule, or if you haven't, you're going to look at the sine rule pretty soon because they tend to come up at the same time. This one's slightly different to the sine rule because it uses, cos or cosine instead on your calculator, all right? Okay, now it can look kind of complicated to start with. The cosine rule basically says that, are you ready for it? A squared, oh that's easy, equals all of that. All right, so b squared plus c squared minus 2bc times by cos of a. And it looks kind of complicated at first sight, but actually, when you start looking at what it actually is, it's not quite so bad as you initially think, right? First of all, let's look at what it actually equals. Well, a squared. Now, a is little a here. Remember, our sides are labelled with small letters. The angles are labelled with big letters. Little a here is this side along here, right? So what we're kind of finding, essentially using the formula, would be the length of this side, but squared, all right? But then surely we could just square root it, couldn't we, just to get the length of that side. So the whole formula is about finding a missing side when it looks like this. Right, B and C. Now, what are they? They are two other sides. They're B and C. And if you square one and you square the other and add them together, which sounds a bit like Pythagoras, a bit, then take away 2bc. So that's 2 times b times c times by the cos of a. Now, a is the angle between them. So actually, the only three different numbers we need to put into this formula is that side, and the angle between them. It's basically like an L shape with the angle between them, right? And if we do that, oh, where's my little thingy gone? It changes colour. Where's my thingy gone that changes colour? Oh, apparently I can't. That's really annoying. Oh well. So if we find those two sides that are in a V shape with the angle between them, we can use that to then find the third side of a triangle. And it's any triangle. It doesn't have to be right angled, just any triangle, right? Because you'll notice on here, right, we've got the side of A over here. It doesn't appear anywhere else, that side. The rest of it is just made up of the side B, side C, and cos of the angle between them. Right, it's easier if we just give an example. So here we go. Calculate the length of P. P is this side along here. And look, I've got a V shape of the other two sides with the angle between them. Right, so in this case, A, the thing I'm trying to find, is actually called P. So instead of calling it A, I'm just going to call it P. Right, because the letter is on here. All they're trying to tell you is, kind of to find this side, you square and add the other two sides, etc., etc. Right. Now, obviously, my equation here says a squared, so I'm going to call it p squared is equal to b and c. Now, you might think, well, which side's b and which side's c? It doesn't actually matter. B could be this one or it could be this one. It doesn't matter. It just means the other two sides, right? So let's take those, and we'll square one of them, and we'll square the other one. And remember, we're adding, and then we take away 2 times b times c. And again, it doesn't really matter which is which. Might as well stick them in the same order. 2 times 4 times 6 times by the cos of a. A is the angle between them, so 70. Right? Now, this is one of those formulas that you do need to remember. This, along with sine rule as well, and general SOHCAHTOA, you have to remember them. But after a while, once you've used it a few times, it tends to stick in your head. Right, okay, so we put it in a calculator, and I've just done that, and it tells me that p squared is 35.58, etc., etc., etc. Okay, but that is p squared. Now, I don't want p squared, I want p. So I need to remember to basically square root both sides there, yeah? So the square root of 35. Now, what I would say is, in your calculator, press square root, press the ANS button, the answer button, because you want to keep full accuracy on this, all right? And it is 5.96515, etc. And there's a whole lot of decimals there, but let's round it to two decimal places I'm going to go to this time, just because I can. The 5 means I round up my 6 to a 7. All right, so to 2 decimal places, it's 5.97. Look at the triangle. Does it sound reasonable? Certainly 35 would have been way too big. Yes, it is. So really, the cosine rule is an equation you need to remember, and you just need to put the numbers into it and use a calculator. It nearly always comes up on a calculator paper. If it doesn't, then it would be numbers that you could easily work with. So, for example, the angle there, the cos of A, that would have to be a number that was an angle that was easy to remember from one of our standard angles, like cos of 60, which is a half, that kind of thing. Okay, right. So remember, B and C are the two other sides. So not the side you're looking for, but the other two others, and the A is the angle between those two sides, a bit like a V shape with the angle, right? What I want you to do now is have a go. Just stick, decide which side is which. I want you to try and find the length of BC, all right, that side there. We are trying to find the length of BC, the one I've just highlighted in blue. Pause the video, try and write it out, put the numbers in your calculator, and see if you can figure out that third side. Okay, so pause now. Okay, we've unpaused, right? This is the same question. So let's have a look. So I want to find the length of BC. So I'm going to call that little a because it's opposite, angle A there. Now a squared will be equal to b squared plus c squared. So those are the other two sides, and it doesn't matter what order you do them in, just as long as you think of one as being b and you think of the other as being c. And then 2 times b times c, so that's the two sides times together. Finally, times by the cos of A, and the angle between them is, again, 70, just like the last one. Okay, again, you're not expected to work that out on your own. You put it in a calculator. If you're getting the wrong numbers, check that you're putting the right plus in the right place or the minus in the right place. If you accidentally put a times when it should be a plus, it's clearly not going to give you the correct answer. Times by cos of 70. Let's just make sure I've got that right. And it tells me that a squared then is 23.39734, etc., etc., etc. Now that's a squared. I don't want a squared, I want a, so I have to square root it. So I press square root, press ANS, so I get the square root of my answer. Full accuracy here. And let's do it to 2 decimal places again. 4.84. No reason that I've gone for 2 decimal places. I just fancied it. All right. Okay. Cool. Right. Try another one then. There you go. Here's another question. So this time, a question is going to come up at some point about, which angle do I use? Think it through. Remember what we said about it being a V shape with the angle between them. All right. If you get really stuck, obviously, unpause briefly to get the hint, and then you can pause again. But otherwise, pause the video now and try and work it out. Off you go. Okay, we've unpaused. Right, now then. So I'm trying to find the length of BC, clearly. Sorry, I should have said that before, really, shouldn't I? I want you to find that length. Now, if I'm going to do that, I will need to use the other two sides. I'm going to need to use AC, I'm going to use AB, and I need the angle between them. Now I don't know the angle between them, but we can just do straightforward angles in a triangle add up to 180. So take away the two sides you know from 180 and see what is left over, which is 180, take away 64, take away 54, leaves 62 degrees, right? So that angle in there is 62 degrees. So now we can get going. Right, the two sides I need are obviously that one and that one. So the side, I'm going to call it A over there. A squared will be equal to B squared plus C squared, so 7.9 squared plus 8.8 squared. Take away 2 times B times C, so 7.9 times 8 8.8 times by cos of the angle. And the angle we said is 62, which is the angle between them. Oh, that's some terrible writing going on there, isn't it? Still, hope you followed that if you're listening. Right, put it in a calculator. So 7.9 squared plus 8.8 squared. Take away 2 times 7.9 times 8.8 times by, finally, the cos of the angle between them, which is 62, equals 74.57467, etc., etc., etc. But I don't want a squared, I want a, so I have to square root it. So we square root, press A and S to keep the full accuracy, and it's 8.64 centimetres. Now it's possible I did that in class today and pressed the wrong button on my calculator and got totally the wrong answer. Possibly, maybe. Not that I ever make mistakes, but if I did, that was definitely one of them. 8.64. Okay, right. Now, if you were in class, I'd now say get the textbook out and do those questions. We're not, so obviously we can't do those questions there because you haven't got the textbook. But what I will do, there's a link at the end of the video, a little tiny URL. If you type that in, it'll take you to a little online booklet of questions. You'll have to write on paper, obviously, but you can see everything on screen that you need to see, and you can do them from there. All right, and there's a link to some answers as well. But for now, let's move on, all right? Because what I'd like you to do is have a look at the formula. There you go, a squared equals, etc., etc., etc. What I want you to do is have a go at just rearranging the formula. So you have on this side cos of A equals, and then obviously everything else. Okay, so I want you to pause the video and try and rearrange it so that you can get it to be cos of A as the subject. Okay, have a go. Okay, we've unpaused. Right, let's have a look at this. Now, firstly, this whole chunk at the end here, minus 2bc times cos of A, is all negative. Now, I don't want it to be negative, so the first thing I'm actually going to do is add 2bc times cos of A. I'm going to add it to both sides of my equation. I'm not going to write it over here because it's just take ages. But if I add it to both sides, firstly, this side will cancel out, but it will be added to the other side. So A squared plus 2bc times cos of A, right? So now it's all shifted in one chunk. And what's left over here is b squared plus c squared. Right, next step. Well, this a squared's an easy thing to do. Take away. So I'm going to take away a squared from both sides. So I've got 2bc times cos of A equals b squared plus c squared minus cos A squared. And lastly, I want cos of A on its own, so I'm going to divide by 2bc. Yeah, on both sides of my equation. So it's cos of A equals b squared plus c squared minus a squared over 2bc. Right, now why is that important? Well, it's important because the cosine rule can be used like this, clearly, because we've just done it, and it can be used like this. Why would we want to have cos of A on one side? Well, that's because what have we found with the previous version of the equation? Well, we found sides. Right, and we can tell this because little a is a side, so this side squared equals everything else. Over here, we're finding angles because cos of A being angle, equals all of this. And all of this is sides. So I can use all three sides to find any of the missing angles. I just have to decide which side is which. All right? So for example, here's a question. I've got three sides, and there's theta, the Greek letter theta representing my angle down there. Now, I know they've labelled this as A, B, and C. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to ignore those labels for now. Because actually, most of them don't matter. I'm going to say that my angle A that I want to find is this one. Okay, now my formula says cos of A equals b squared plus c squared minus a squared. Now, before it didn't matter which was b and c, and in a way, this doesn't matter either. You know, one of them's going to be that side, one of them's going to be that side, either side of my angle. Now, remember, when we said labeling the sides, we've learnt before that this angle A is opposite the side which is also labelled A, but in lowercase, right? So that's the angle. The side opposite has the same letter, just lowercase. So when I'm subtracting, it has to be that side squared, 10 squared, that I'm subtracting. The other two don't matter, but the one that's important, that a squared there is the one that's opposite the angle. So the other two don't matter, but we can do 6 squared plus 9 squared, or I could have done 9 squared plus 6 squared, but it's important that the subtract one is the 10, because it's opposite the angle. Divided by 2 times whatever b is times whatever c is, times 6 and 9. And again, you're not expected to do this on your own unless it's really easy numbers. So put it in a calculator. 6 squared plus 9 squared minus 10 squared, all divided by 2 times 6 times 9. And I get a fraction. Do you know, I'm going to write it as a fraction, actually, I think, to be honest. Why not? 17 over 108. It's nice and accurate then. You could use the decimal. Wouldn't matter. But that is not my answer, because I don't want cos of A. What I want is A. Now, remember, angles are shifty. You've got to press shift on your calculator, because we need cos to the minus 1. We need the inverse of cos. The inverse of cos of all of that. So I've just done inverse here to get A, and we inverse cos this to get that, which you can see on screen. And so inverse cos of the answer equals 80 point to 1 decimal place, because I am fickle like that. I change what I'm going to round it to. 80.9, and what are we talking about? Well, it's degrees, because it's an angle. Yep, all good there? Excellent. Right, that's how you do it. So remember, the a squared bit is the side opposite the angle. Otherwise, the b and c don't matter which is which. Just plug the numbers in. Don't forget to use inverse cos at the end. There's your question. Pause the video. Off you go. Okay. We have unpaused. Right, if that's my angle A, that's my side A, because it's opposite. So when I'm saying subtract A squared, it will be subtract 8 squared. Right, cos of my angle equals, right, B squared plus C squared. It doesn't matter which is B and C, it's just those two sides. So 5.8 squared plus 5.7 squared. Doesn't matter which way round they go. But it must be subtract 8 squared. All divided by 2 times B times C. Again, doesn't matter which order they go in, as long as they're both there. Which equals, so that is cos of A. Just let me type it in my old calculator. Or rather my daughter's calculator, because I left mine at school today. But it's alright, I've bought her about 4 calculators already, all of which seem to disappear very quickly. Not that I'm moaning. All I'm doing is filling time whilst typing it in. Right, 5.8 squared, 5.7 squared. Let's go. It says, oh, I've got another fraction again. Well, that's fine. I like working with fractions, but you could use the decimal if you wanted to. 71 over 2204. This is just the fraction's nice and accurate, isn't it? Then remember, that's not my answer, because I need to inverse cos to get my answer. Now, whether you're working with a fraction or a decimal, you need to find inverse cos of it. I'm going to press shift, press cos to get inverse cos. 71 divided by 2204. The answer is 88.2 degrees, Okay, I'm just going to double check that I got all my stuff there right. It looks like it's right. If you think I'm wrong, just, keep it to yourself. Or maybe let me know if you really want to. I do like to know when I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's right. I don't know why am I even thinking it's wrong? Of course it's right. I did it right. So that's how you find an angle. Now, different people remember these in different ways. You definitely need to remember this first formula, a squared equals b squared plus c squared, etc. You need sometimes to be able to find angles, and so you use this second formula. Now, you can either just memorize it, or if you're very good at rearranging, just remember the main one, and just remember you need to rearrange it. But maybe learn both. Up to you. What you could do now, please, don't do those questions, but you could go to that, type in tinyurl.com/y6anm7kw, exactly as it is, and it should take you to a worksheet on Maths Genie, which is a great website full of stuff. And then the answers are, if you type in that tiny URL, it will take you to the worksheet of answers as well, and it should look like that. Okay, cosine rule. Good luck with it. I hope it goes well. Let me know if you have any problems, possibly. Otherwise, take care, and I'll see you next time for some more maths. And I'm never going to talk like that ever again.